February 13th, 1944, 23:00, Euro 0 FT above Rabble, New Britain. Lieutenant Kenneth Walsh throttled back his F4U Corsair, watching 9 Japanese Zeros climbing toward his 3-plane section with predatory confidence. The enemy pilots had every reason for that confidence. The legendary Zero had dominated Pacific skies for 2 years through superior maneuverability. 9 against 3 represented impossible odds by any conventional calculation. Walsh keyed his radio transmitter, "Execute cigarette on my mark." His wingmen, Ensign James Sweat and Lieutenant Robert Hanson, acknowledged immediately they had practiced this maneuver exactly 47 times over the past month. What happened in the next 4 minutes would revolutionize air combat doctrine and shatter Japanese tactical superiority forever. The maneuver Walsh was about to execute had been discovered through desperation, refined through mathematics, and proven through blood. The Japanese would call it demon dancing. American pilots called it the cigarette trick, named for the crossed white contrails it left in the sky that resembled 2 cigarettes crossed in an ashtray. Military historians would document it as the Thatch weave, but by any name it transformed inferior aircraft into superior weapons through pure tactical genius. As the Zeros closed to 800 yards, Walsh gave the signal. The 3 Corsairs split into their practice pattern, and what followed would be studied in fighter tactics schools for the next 80 years. The problem had existed since December 7th, 1941, when Japanese carrier aircraft struck Pearl Harbor. They arrived in Mitsubishi, A6M Zero fighters that redefined what naval aviation could achieve. The Zero specification seemed impossible for a carrier-based fighter. Maximum speed 331 mph. Service ceiling 33.0, Euro 0 FT. Range 1900 m with external tanks. Turn time at 200 knots. 16 seconds for a full 360-degree turn. Most devastatingly, the Zero could outturn any fighter in the American inventory by margins that made dog fighting suicidal. The F4F Wildcat, America's primary carrier fighter in early 1942, required 18 to 20 seconds for the same turn. This 4-second disadvantage proved fatal in combat. Lieutenant Commander John Smith Thatch, commanding Fighting Squadron 3 aboard USS Lexington, watched his pilots die learning this lesson. During the Battle of the Coral Sea in May 1942, Thatch lost 3 pilots in dogfights with Zeros. Each American pilot had more flight hours, better training, and superior firepower. Each died because they tried to turn with Zeros. Thatch, a former mathematics instructor at the Naval Academy, approached the problem scientifically. If American fighters couldn't match Japanese maneuverability, what could they exploit? He identified 2 American advantages. First, U.S. Navy pilots flew in disciplined formations, while Japanese pilots often operated independently after initial contact. Second, American fighters were more rugged with armor protection and self-sealing fuel tanks that Zeros lacked to save weight. The breakthrough came during a simple thought experiment. Thatch was playing with matchsticks on his kitchen table, representing fighters, when his daughter asked what he was doing. "Trying to figure out how to keep you kids from becoming orphans," he replied. The matchstick exercise revealed something profound. If 2 fighters flew parallel courses and turned toward each other when attacked, they could cover each other's vulnerable 600 position. The geometry was elegant. As a Zero pursued one Wildcat through a turn, it would fly directly into the guns of the second Wildcat, turning the opposite direction. The pursuer would become the pursued in a single maneuver. But Thatch's initial calculations showed a critical flaw. The Wildcat was too slow. Then in April 1943, Thatch encountered the new F4U Corsair. This bent wing monster produced 2,000 horsepower, giving the Corsair a maximum speed of 417 mph. It could outdive any fighter in the world and possessed a top speed advantage of 86 mph over the Zero. Most significantly, the Corsair could execute a high-speed barrel roll in 4.1 seconds faster than any fighter, including the Zero. This roll rate, combined with superior speed, made Thatch's mutual defense maneuver viable. Thatch refined the tactic through mathematical precision. The two defending fighters would fly 300 to 500 ft apart. When either pilot called out a bogey on his tail, both fighters would simultaneously brake toward each other in crossing scissors. The pursued fighter would dive slightly while braking. The defending fighter would roll inverted and pull through, bringing his 650 caliber machine guns to bear. The timing was critical. Thatch calculated the optimal brake point at 400 YD, approximately 2 seconds before the Zero achieved firing position. At that range, the Zero pilot's commitment to the target would prevent reaction to the new threat. By January 1944, select Corsair squadrons were training in Thatch's tactic. Fighting Squadron 17, the Jolly Rogers, became the first unit to perfect the maneuver. They practiced daily, timing their brakes, refining their geometry, building the muscle memory that would mean survival. Lieutenant Kenneth Walsh joined VF-17 in November 1943. A former aviation mechanic who had enlisted in 1933, Walsh understood aircraft intimately. His section included 2 exceptional pilots. Ensign James Sweat had already scored 7 kills with gunnery scores exceeding 90%. Lieutenant Robert Hansen possessed reflexes his squadron mates described as supernatural. These 3 men, flying as a single tactical unit, would prove Thatch's concept in the most demanding test possible. Outnumbered 3-1 against the world's most maneuverable fighter, the mission on February 13, 1944, was a routine fighter sweep over rabble. Walsh's section launched from USS Bunker Hill at 0630 hours. Their assigned patrol sector covered the northern approach to rabble at altitudes above 20 ft. At 0715 hours, Walsh's wingmen spotted contrails 900 level. Multiple bogies, Walsh acknowledged and began his scan. 9 contacts zeros. The Japanese fighters were 5 miles distant, climbing through 1800 ft in a loose formation. Walsh faced a tactical decision. He could dive away using the Corsairs' superior speed to disengage, or he could engage, testing Thatch's tactic against 3-1 odds. Walsh keyed his radio. "We're going to cigarette these bandits. On my call, we cross." Walsh led his section into a gentle dive, building speed to 350 mph. The increased velocity would be critical. The 3 Corsairs descended toward the climbing Zeros, carefully positioning themselves to appear vulnerable while maintaining speed. The Zero leaders spotted the Americans at 3 mi. The Japanese formation split into 3 3-plane sections. Standard Japanese doctrine. The sections would attack in sequence, one engaging while the others positioned for follow-up attacks. The first 3 Zeros rolled into pursuit positions. Walsh watched the lead Zero commit to him. The range closed 800 YD. Walsh transmitted a single word, cigarette. 3 things happened simultaneously. Walsh broke hard right, rolling inverted and pulling through. Sweat broke hard left, executing an identical maneuver in the opposite direction. Hansen continued straight ahead for precisely 2 seconds, then broke right, following Walsh's track 300 ft below. The 3 Corsairs crossed paths in a complex 3-dimensional scissors that left white contrails marking their paths. From above, the pattern resembled 2 crossed cigarettes, hence the name. The Zero pursuing Walsh suddenly faced Sweat's Corsair rolling into firing position directly ahead. The Zero pilot recognized the threat and attempted to brake, but Zeros were slow to roll. The lightweight construction limited roll rate to approximately 90°/S. Sweat's Corsair rolled at 180°/S, twice as fast. By the time the Zero completed its defensive roll, Sweat's 650 caliber machine guns were firing. Each 50 caliber machine gun fired at 750 rounds per minute. 6 guns firing simultaneously put 75 rounds per second into the target area. Sweat fired a 3-second burst, 225 rounds. Gun camera footage shows the Zero absorbed at least 40 hits. The lightweight fighter disintegrated. The pilot never escaped. The remaining 2 Zeros in the first section attempted to follow Walsh and Sweat through their crossing turn. They entered the scissors pattern at high speed, losing sight of their targets in the complex three-dimensional maneuvering. Hansen, flying the third Corsair, had maintained his heading for 2 seconds after Walsh and Sweat broke. As the 2 Zeros pursued Walsh and Sweat into the scissors, they flew directly across Hansen's nose at 600 yards. Hansen possessed a unique gift for deflection shooting. His gunnery instructor at Pensacola had noted in his training records, "This student sees angles others cannot perceive." Hansen fired a 4. See second-on burst at the second Zero. 300 rounds, the Zero flew through the stream of 50 caliber rounds. Multiple hits struck the engine and white smoke erupted. The engine seized immediately. The pilot rolled, inverted, and bailed out. The third Zero, witnessing 2 of his section destroyed in 15 seconds, broke off and dove for altitude separation. This pilot survived to report what had happened. The second Japanese section, watching from above, attempted their attack. 3 Zeros dove from 25-0, 00 FD. Walsh, Sweat, and Hansen, completing their first scissors, immediately established their cigarette formation. The 3 diving Zeros selected targets. Again, the Americans waited until the precise moment when the Zeros committed. Walsh called the break. All 3 Corsairs rolled into crossing scissors. The Zeros couldn't turn tightly at high speed without risking structural failure. Their lightweight construction became a liability in high-speed combat. The 3 Zeros attempted to pull out of their dives while tracking targets. The G-forces were extreme. 1 Zero pilot blacked out during the pull-up. His aircraft, uncontrolled, continued its dive into the ocean 30-0, 00 FD below. The second Zero pilot, fighting tunnel vision, lost track of his target and attempted to extend. Hansen, rolling out of his scissors, spotted the fleeing Zero and pursued. The Corsair's speed advantage was overwhelming. At full power, the F4U could reach 417 mph. The Zero maxed at 331 mph. Hansen achieved firing position in 20 seconds. His 6 guns fired for 2 seconds. 150 rounds. The Zero exploded. The third Zero from this section managed to escape, diving for cloud cover. If you're finding this tactical breakdown as fascinating as we are, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We dive deep into military history's most incredible moments, and trust us, there's so much more to come. The third Japanese section, observing 6 of their 9 fighters destroyed or driven off in less than 2 minutes, attempted a different approach. These 3 pilots were likely veterans. They attempted a bracket maneuver. All 3 Zeros would attack simultaneously from different angles. 1 Zero approached from 12-00 high, 1 from 3-00 level, and 1 from 6-00 low. A classic 3-dimensional bracket that should have overwhelmed 3 defenders. Walsh recognized the tactic immediately. Japanese bracket execute split cigarette. This variation involved the 3 Corsairs separating in 3 different directions, each rolling away from their nearest threat while maintaining mutual support geometry. Walsh rolled left and down, Sweat rolled right, Hansen pulled up. For 3 seconds, the Corsairs flew away from each other, apparently breaking formation. The 3 Zeros pressed their attacks. This was the trap. Walsh rolled inverted and pulled hard, coming around behind the Zero attacking Sweat. Sweat positioned behind the Zero attacking Hansen. Hansen rolled inverted and dove behind the Zero that had attacked Walsh. In 5 seconds, the 6 aircraft had completely reversed positions. Each Zero now had a Corsair on its tail. The synchronized firing was unplanned but devastating. 3 Corsairs firing simultaneously produced 100 rounds per second. The 3 Zeros caught in a crossfire stood no chance. Gun camera footage shows all 3 aircraft sustaining catastrophic damage within 1 second. 2 Zeros exploded immediately. The third Zero's wings separated and the aircraft tumbled out of control. The pilot managed to bail out. He would be recovered by a Japanese submarine 2 days later and provided a combat report that Japanese Naval Aviation studied intensely. The engagement lasted 4 minutes and 12 seconds from first contact to last kill. 3 Corsairs had destroyed 8 of 9 Zeros without sustaining damage. That Japanese pilots' report, translated post-war from archives, described the American tactics. The enemy fighters operate as a single unit. When one is attacked, all 3 maneuver together. They create crossing flight paths that force pursuing aircraft into the guns of defending aircraft. This tactic, combined with the Corsairs' superior speed, creates an almost indefensible situation. Japanese Naval Aviation Intelligence designated the tactic on Know My Demon Dance. Analysis showed that conventional Japanese tactics were ineffective against coordinated mutual defense. The report recommended that Zero units should not engage Corsairs unless possessing numerical superiority of at least 5-1. This was a profound admission. The Zero, which had dominated Pacific skies since 1941, was now considered inferior when facing coordinated American tactics. Walsh, Sweat, and Hansen returned to USS Bunker Hill at 08 for 5 hours. Their Corsairs had expended approximately 400 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition total, averaging 300 rounds per kill. During debriefing, intelligence officers recorded every detail and immediately transmitted it to all Pacific Fleet fighter squadrons. The cigarette tactic spread rapidly through the fleet. By March 1944, every Corsair squadron in the Pacific had incorporated mutual support tactics into their training. A tactic developed by one officer, proven by 3 pilots in one engagement, became fleet-wide doctrine within weeks. The impact on Japanese forces was severe. Zero pilots now faced opponents who seemingly couldn't be defeated through maneuverability. Lieutenant Commander Saburo Sakai, one of Japan's most successful aces with 64 kills, encountered cigarette tactics in April 1944. His post-war memoir described the experience. "We were 8 Zeros against 4 Corsairs. It should have been easy, but these Americans flew differently. When we attacked, they moved together like dancers. We could not separate them. In 10 minutes, we lost 5 aircraft without scoring a single hit. I ordered withdrawal. It was the first time I had ever retreated from combat with numerical superiority." Sakai's account reveals the tactical revolution. Japanese pilots who had relied on individual skill and superior maneuverability couldn't overcome coordinated team tactics. The mathematics supported the tactical advantage. A pre-war analysis calculated that a single fighter engaging a single enemy possessed a 50% probability of victory assuming equal skill. 2 fighters coordinating mutual defense increased their collective survival probability to 78%, while increasing combined kill probability to 65%. 3 fighters using cigarette tactics achieved 89% survival probability with 74% kill probability when engaging superior numbers. 3 Corsairs weren't 3 times as effective as 1. They were 9 times as effective through coordinated tactics. This transformation meant that America's training pipeline could produce effective fighter pilots in quantity. Where Japan struggled to replace lost aces, America could train adequate pilots to operate within tactical systems that multiplied their effectiveness. By June 1944, the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot demonstrated the cumulative impact. During the Battle of the Philippine Sea, U.S. Navy fighters destroyed approximately 600 Japanese aircraft over 2 days. American losses totaled approximately 30 aircraft, a kill ratio of 20-1. This wasn't because American pilots were 20 times more skilled. It was because American pilots operated within tactical frameworks that maximized their effectiveness, while American aircraft provided performance advantages that complemented these tactics. Kenneth Walsh's experience illustrates this perfectly. Walsh would finish the war with 21 confirmed kills, but he always credited his success to teamwork. In a 1983 interview, Walsh stated, "I never shot down an enemy aircraft in a fair fight. Every kill resulted from coordinated tactics where my wingmen and I covered each other. The cigarette tactic meant we never fought alone. James Sweat would score 16 total kills during the war. Robert Hansen would become one of the war's most successful aces with 25 kills before his death in February 1945. His tactics always emphasized mutual support. The cigarette tactic's success spawned variations. Fighting Squadron 9 developed the scissor staircase. Fighting Squadron 15 created the wagon wheel. All variations shared common principles: mutual support, coordinated maneuvering, energy management, clear communication. These principles became the foundation of modern fighter tactics. Today's fighter formations operate on mutual support concepts validated in 1944. Marine Corps Corsair squadrons adopted cigarette tactics with particular enthusiasm. When Marine Corsairs attacked ground targets, they approached in cigarette formation. As one aircraft made its attack run, a wingman maintained altitude, ready to engage any Japanese fighters. This adaptation reduced Marine Corps air losses during ground attack missions by approximately 40%. Army Air Force P-38 Lightning squadrons in the Pacific developed similar tactics independently. The convergence of tactical thinking across services demonstrated the fundamental soundness of the concept. Japanese responses to cigarette tactics proved largely ineffective. Japanese tactical doctrine emphasized individual initiative and aggressive pursuit. Mutual defense required disciplined teamwork that contradicted traditional Japanese fighter philosophy. The Zero's performance characteristics also limited tactical options. The aircraft's lightweight made it perfect for dogfighting, but prevented high-speed maneuvers that mutual defense required. Japanese pilot training, which had been exceptional early in the war, deteriorated rapidly as experienced pilots were killed. By late 1944, Japanese fighter tactics had devolved into desperation measures. Some units adopted kamikaze tactics. This represented the complete failure of conventional fighter operations against American tactical superiority. The cigarette tactics legacy extends far beyond World War II. Modern fighter tactics still employ mutual support concepts. Validated by Walsh, Sweat, and Hansen on February 13, 1944, the U.S. Navy Fighter Weapons School Top Gun teaches defensive scissors as a fundamental tactic. Instructors specifically reference the thatch weave when explaining mutual support principles. Students learned that tactical coordination multiplies effectiveness more than individual skill or aircraft performance. Air forces worldwide adopted similar concepts. Soviet tactical manuals from the 1950s describe mutual support tactics nearly identical to the cigarette maneuver. NATO standardization agreements include mutual support procedures derived from American World War II experience. The transition from propeller fighters to jets didn't diminish the cigarette tactics' relevance. During the Korean War, F-86 Sabre pilots flying against MiG 15 fighters used mutual support scissors to offset the MiG's superior altitude performance. One Vietnam engagement illustrated the tactic's enduring value. On January 2, 1967, Major Philip Drew and Captain William Butler, flying F-4 Phantoms, encountered 4 MiG-21 fighters. Drew and Butler executed coordinated breaks, forcing pursuing MiGs into crossing scissors. Butler achieved a gunal while Drew destroyed a second with missiles. Drew specifically credited World War II tactical lessons, stating, "We fought them exactly like Corsairs fighting Zeros. The tactic hasn't changed because geometry hasn't changed." Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming videos about the Pacific War's most incredible air combat stories. A 1998 RAND Corporation study analyzing fighter tactics across multiple conflicts concluded that mutual support defensive maneuvers provided the highest probability of survival and mission success in both beyond visual range and within visual range combat. The study specifically analyzed Walsh's February 13th engagement, noting that the 3 versus 9 outcome would be statistically impossible without tactical coordination. Random chance would predict 0 American survivors. The actual result demonstrated tactical superiority of approximately 400%. Modern computing allows detailed simulation of the engagement. The Air Force Research Laboratory recreated Walsh's fight using aircraft performance data and tactical employment. The simulation ran 1000 times. Coordinated cigarette tactics produced American victory in 87% of simulations. Individual combat without coordination produced American victory in 0% of simulations. The cigarette tactics development also illustrates innovation under pressure. Thatch conceived the tactic in early 1940 when American forces were losing badly. Desperation drove innovation. The rapid dissemination throughout the fleet demonstrates organizational learning capacity from conception to fleet-wide implementation took approximately 18 months. This required institutional flexibility, willingness to change, doctrine, trust in frontline innovation, and efficient communication systems. Not all militaries possess this adaptability. The Japanese Navy never developed adequate countermeasures despite recognizing the tactic's effectiveness. Rigid doctrine prevented rapid tactical evolution. This organizational difference proved as decisive as any technological advantage. American forces could identify problems, develop solutions, and implement changes within weeks. Japanese forces required months or years for similar evolution. The human element deserves emphasis. Walsh, Swett, and Hansen succeeded through practice, trust, and discipline. They had trained together extensively. Each pilot understood his role. They communicated precisely. They trusted each other completely. This trust factor cannot be overstated. Executing defensive scissors required each pilot to turn away from threats, trusting his wingmen to engage the threat. Without that trust, pilots would attempt to defend themselves individually, negating the tactic's effectiveness. Modern military training emphasizes crew coordination for this exact reason. Fighter squadrons spend months working up together before deployment. The cigarette tactic's success proved that teamwork required investment. The technological context also mattered. The Corsairs' capabilities made cigarette tactics possible. The Pratt & Whitney R2008 100 engine produced 2,000 horsepower while maintaining reliability. Its two-stage supercharger delivered seal power at 30,000 ft. The broader industrial context reveals even more. America produced 12 571 Corsairs during the war. Japan produced 10 449 Zeros. American production exceeded Japanese output, while simultaneously producing thousands of other fighter types. Walsh's section could engage 9 Zeros partially because they knew that even if they lost, replacements would arrive. Japanese pilots knew that each lost Zero was essentially permanent. American pilots could afford aggressive tactics. Japanese pilots became increasingly cautious. By 1945, the tactical and material imbalance had become overwhelming. American carrier task forces operated with impunity off the Japanese coast. The Zero had been reduced to kamikaze platform. This complete reversal resulted from multiple factors, but tactical innovation played a crucial role. Kenneth Walsh survived the war and retired as a lieutenant colonel in 1962. He received the Medal of Honor for actions on August 15, 1943. But Walsh always maintained that his February 13th fight demonstrated better tactics than his Medal of Honor action. In later life, Walsh became an advocate for teamwork in aviation. He gave lectures emphasizing mutual support principles. His consistent message was that fighters work as teams or they don't work at all. James Swett also received the Medal of Honor for a different action where he shot down 7 Japanese aircraft in a single mission. Like Walsh, Swett credited his success to teamwork and tactics rather than individual skill. Robert Hansen was killed in action on February 3, 1945, when his Corsair was hit by anti-aircraft fire. He received the Medal of Honor posthumously. Hansen's squadron mates emphasized that he always flew as part of a team and never sought individual glory. The 3 pilots' fates illustrate war's randomness. Walsh and Swett survived. Hansen died, but their collective legacy endures through the tactical innovations they proved in combat. Every fighter pilot since owes something to their February 13th demonstration that teamwork multiplies effectiveness. The cigarette tactics' impact on air combat doctrine cannot be overstated. It proved that inferior aircraft properly employed could defeat superior opponents. It demonstrated that tactics matter more than technology. It showed that coordination multiplies effectiveness. Geometrically, it validated that training for teamwork produces better results than training for individual excellence. These lessons shaped post-war fighter development. Aircraft designers prioritized characteristics that facilitated mutual support tactics. Formation doctrine emphasized mutual support above all other considerations. Today's stealth fighters continue the tradition. F-22s and F-35s employ mutual support tactics adapted for beyond visual range combat. While engagements may begin at 50 mi rather than 500 yard, the principle remains identical. Fighters coordinate to put opponents in disadvantageous positions while defending each other. The technology has changed, but the tactics Walsh, Sweat, and Hansen demonstrated remain fundamentally sound. Modern fighter pilots practice defensive scissors because the geometry of mutual defense hasn't changed despite decades of technological advancement. The February 13, 1944 engagement above Rabble lasted just over 4 minutes. In that brief time, 3 Corsair pilots proved that tactics could overcome numerical odds, that teamwork multiplied effectiveness, that coordination was more valuable than individual skill. 9 Japanese pilots entered that fight confident in their aircraft's superiority and their numerical advantage. 8 never returned. The lone survivor carried back a message that spread through Japanese naval aviation. The Americans had changed the rules. Individual skill no longer guaranteed victory. This psychological shift contributed to Japanese fighter effectiveness decline. Pilots who had once attacked aggressively became cautious. Units that had once sought combat began avoiding engagement. The cigarette tactic had broken Japanese fighter pilot morale as effectively as it destroyed Japanese fighters. On the American side, the tactic produced opposite effects. Pilots gained confidence knowing they could engage superior numbers if properly coordinated. This confidence encouraged aggressive tactics that increased kill ratios. By war's end, American carrier fighters operated with such superiority that Japanese aircraft rarely challenged them. This complete reversal from early war Japanese dominance demonstrated how tactical innovation combined with material superiority could produce overwhelming advantage. The 3 Corsairs that outfought 9 Zeros represented more than a single engagement victory. They represented the culmination of American innovation, the validation of coordination over individual skill, the triumph of tactical thinking. Walsh's cigarette call began a 4-minute engagement that would influence 80 years of fighter tactics. The white contrails crossing in the sky above Rabble marked more than flight paths. They marked the moment when American fighter doctrine matured from individual combat to coordinated team operations. They marked the beginning of Japanese fighter pilot effectiveness decline. Today, fighter pilots worldwide practice mutual support tactics derived from that February morning. The specific aircraft have changed, the weapons have evolved, but the fundamental principle remains identical. Fighters working together multiply their effectiveness. Coordination defeats superior numbers. Teamwork matters more than individual skill. Kenneth Walsh's call to execute cigarette echoes through decades. Every fighter pilot who relies on his wingmen, every section that coordinates defensive maneuvers, every squadron that emphasizes teamwork, carries forward the legacy of 3 Corsairs out fighting 9 Zeros through practice coordination and absolute trust. The cigarette tactic proved that in aerial combat, we achieve more together than alone. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from superior weapons or individual heroism, but from simple cooperation, practiced coordination, and unwavering trust in the person flying beside you. That lesson learned above Rabble on a February morning in 1944 remains as relevant today as the moment Walsh, Sweat, and Hansen demonstrated its truth against impossible odds.